to Rising. We're already having a pretty fun time here in the studio, and we've got some big news. It is Briahna Joy Gray's birthday. Happy birthday, Briahna.
Thank you, Robbie. Big news indeed. The best part I'm realizing of having a birthday here working at Rising is the amazing soundtrack they play in your ear as we're getting ready to start recording.
That's right. That was all for you.
Yeah, a little bit of Disney tunes will light my morning right up.
We've been hearing a lot of, when I come in, they're playing like bird sounds. I'm getting a little over the bird sounds. Maybe we're going to replace them with some other animals.
Okay, I look forward to seeing what your personal hype soundtrack sounds like, Robbie. I think it's going to sound like we're maybe crusading through a crusade, is that what you call it on these games? A quest, excuse me. Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah. All right, I can't wait.
Well, in fact, we do have some news related to President Trump. Take it away.
Well, the former president was indicted by a Georgia grand jury yesterday on charges tied to his alleged effort to overturn the state's 2020 election results. Georgia prosecutors say Trump headed a pressure campaign on state officials to reverse his loss, in addition to organizing a fake elector scheme. Per the indictment, quote, Trump and the other defendants charged in this indictment refused to accept that Trump lost, and they knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump.
Prosecutors made a total of 41 charges against the former president and also a slate of 19 alleged co-conspirators, which include Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, and Sidney Powell, among others. These charges are racketeering, making false statements, forgery, impersonating a public officer, and soliciting public officers to violate their oaths. Now, Fulton County Prosecutor Fani Willis spoke before reporters last night. Let's watch.
I make decisions in this office based on the facts and the law. The law is completely nonpartisan. That's how decisions are made in every case. To date, this office has indicted, since I've been sitting as a district attorney, over 12,000 cases. This is the 11th RICO indictment. We followed the same process. We look at the facts, we look at the law, and we bring charges.
Willis says that Trump and his co-defendants must voluntarily surrender by August 25th at noon, and that she hopes to schedule a single trial for all the defendants within the next 6 months.
Now, the former president said of the new indictment on Truth Social last night, quote, so the witch hunt continues. 19 people indicted tonight, including the former president of the United States, me, by an out-of-control and very corrupt district attorney who campaigned and raised money on I will get Trump. And what about those indictment documents put out today, long before the grand jury even voted, and then quickly withdrawn? Sounds rigged to me. Why didn't they indict 2.5 years ago? Because they wanted to do it right in the middle of my political campaign. Witch hunt.
And he's referring there to the documents briefly appearing online before they were ready to be unveiled, which people are reading something into that.
Yeah, it seems mostly like a mistake. I'm not sure exactly what the advantage would be of airing it just a few hours in advance.
Sorry, if you do that, no trial. Can't, it's a mistrial. Sorry.
That's what the Constitution says.
That's how it works.
All right, well, what do you make of this? This feels like a new version of the argument a little bit that he's been making about the witch hunt, that it's a timing issue, and if they were going to prosecute him, why not do it 2.5 years ago? Do you think
I just assume it's government business, so it takes a million years for them to be ready to do anything. So these charges are somewhat similar. There's some overlap with Jack Smith's federal charges. The main difference being that Smith only charged Trump, and here it's Trump and a lot of associates under this kind of racketeering, almost, people hear the term RICO a lot. It's that kind of, it's a alleged criminal conspiracy of a bunch of people, obviously specific to what went on in Georgia.
Usually it was designed to try to get at mob activity and the kind of diffuse top-down, but not often every crime traced to the person at the top sort of situation.
And I think conservatives broadly, Trump fans obviously, are just as angry about these charges as anything else. I was seeing Andrew McCarthy, who's a former prosecutor, he's a writer for National Review, conservative. He thinks that these charges are probably, well, not as strong as the Mar-a-Lago documents case, but other than that, the strongest charges we've seen so far, that the kind of the language of the statutes he's being charged here more closely fits the actual activity, the mob-style activity to get some illicit result is a little bit, is I think a better fit for the totality of the misbehavior that he and his associates engaged in. Also very important to note, the biggest difference between this and all the other charges, or between this and Jack Smith, is that it's a state charge, it can't, if he's convicted, it can't go away. He can't pardon
it.
himself from it. He can't, the president can't pardon a state charge. So this one will stick if he were to be convicted under it, no matter what.
Right,
Where
winning the election doesn't get out of it, get him out of it. Right,
Yeah.
So, there are people, including people on the left who are criminal justice minded, who have been critical of RICO in the past. That is saying it's an expansive kind of a law that is often used to rope in some people at a level of criminal liability that is perhaps disproportionate. That's an argument I'm sure that some people will start to make. It is notable that the DA has indicted people relatively recently under this RICO statute. There was a test cheating case in the last few years, apparently one of the longest trials in Georgia history back in 2014, in which 35 educators were indicted for a RICO
I remember that
scheme.
case, yes.
So there is some precedent for, if people are thinking, well, this feels like a weird thing to apply this kind of mob statute to, there is precedent for that in the state, if that helps people wrestle with whether or not this is a purely kind of political persecution where they're inventing new kind of legal theories.
Right, which is, and this indictment is a little bit more along the lines of, obviously I've raised my concerns about this criminalizing and ultimately going after speech in the context of the Jack Smith indictment. Here, what is described is more, in some way to me, seems more obviously to cross a line from just speech into actions that the recruiting of the fake electors. There's an allegation of actually wrongfully acquiring voting data from the Dominion voting machines. That would actually be, it's like that's an underlying crime. That's a criminal thing, not just you asked for something or you demanded something or you pressured. That involves a really more obviously criminal act, if that makes sense.
So to that point, there's 40 other crimes that are included in addition to the racketeering charge that include making false statements, forgery, impersonating a public officer, and soliciting public officers to violate their oath. So to the extent that now we're looking at crimes, forging documents, illegally
those are all
obtaining
crimes, if you get what I'm saying.
Yes,
now, so the defense,
legally crimes.
If you're looking for a defense of Trump here, you can say, well, his associates were doing all that stuff, and hang him out to dry. What was Trump's level of knowledge and understanding of that being criminal and wrong, and that kind of thing? So you can maybe make a sort of defense there that as you said, in the past they've wrongfully criminalized whole group. People get roped into these kind of RICO charges, and that
did Tony Soprano
Trump
really know what was going on? Is the question here? Yeah. So look, I do think that part of what's going on here in the choice to charge all 19, some people have asked, well, is that going to slow up this prosecution? They're looking for a 6-month turnaround. Some people have said that seems overly ambitious. Notably, Donald Trump this will be his 4th trial that's scheduled to happen next year, one way or the other. But one of the theories is that the choice to charge all 19 at once, instead of having these unindicted conspirators as in the other case, is the hope that people will start to flip. And so to the extent that we have knowledge, and if you read the indictment, knowledge of that this phone call happened at this time, that these emails were exchanged, that these meetings happened at these times, to the extent that we don't know fully what was happening in the context of those conversations, the people in the room are charged and might choose to flip on Donald Trump and testify against him if they can escape some liability themselves. It's also worth knowing that there's a minimum sentence of 5 years under this Georgia RICO statute, and it goes up, I think, to a maximum of 20 years.
Yeah, it's
lots of incentives to flip if you don't want to go to jail for 5 years.
Again, Trump is going to have such a busy schedule appearing in various courts for various trials. One wonders how he's going to be possibly campaigning, although I guess it's just the trials are the campaign, really.
Yeah, I mean, some people have argued that this could actually continue to work to his benefit.
I mean, it continues to work to his advantage. It's undeniable that it continues to work to his advantage in the Republican primaries. Does it work to any sort of advantage in a general election? I don't. That theory has not been. It's not been tested yet, I guess. But.
It does feel like this indictment and the last indictment have started to empower some of the people that are running against him to make increasingly specific and firm statements that are condemnatory of Donald Trump.
You think they would at least be making the just practical argument that
it's hard
our candidate can't be running for president and simultaneously fighting for his life in 4 separate trials. That's just not the right person to be even if you think he did nothing wrong, that's not. He's got to go out there, clear his name, but he's not going to be in the game for this.
I completely agree.
I don't know why they're not making that argument.
And I also do think that the pointed, more specific focus of this indictment, and additionally the last one, is going to resurface aspects of what came out during the 1-6 hearings that were overwhelmed by all of the focus on what happened on the day of 1-6, including the Raffensperger tape, which I think it's worth playing again. I think we have it here. It's going to be a central piece to this particular Georgia indictment.
Look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have. But it's a big problem in Georgia, and it's not a problem that's going away. I mean, it's not a problem that's going away. And we got to.
President, this is Ryan. We're looking into every one of those things that you mentioned.
Okay,
and our
that's
investigators.
good. But if you find them, you got to say it, Ryan. Look, if they're, let me ask you, Ryan, if they're destroying ballots.
Let me tell you what we are seeing.
Go ahead. Good.
What we're seeing is not at all what you're describing.
Okay.
And these are investigators from our office. These are investigators from GBI, and they're looking and they're good, and that's not what they're seeing. And we'll keep looking. We'll keep looking at all these things.
Well, you better check on the ballots because they are shredding ballots.
So this is going to be the core question. As evidence like that is out there and continues to come out that shows a number of Republican high-ranking election officials clearly telling the president that the evidence of fraud that he's pointing to isn't real, telling him that they would prefer that he win, but their hands are tied because the votes are what the votes are, and he continues to ask them to find the votes. Is a jury going to believe that he, in fact, sincerely believed that he had won, that there was evidence that supported that belief and not just a kind of delusion, and that he is not criminally liable for directing his co-conspirators to try to rig the election results, create knowingly false slates of electors, submitting them with a purpose, per John Eastman, one of the indicted, of causing confusion in Congress that would enable them to plausibly ignore the vote tallies of all the millions of people around the country who cast their ballots, and instead use that confusion to throw the election decision to the House of Representatives.
I mean, if that tape was all they had, I would think at least he'll make an argument in his defense that he did sincerely believe he'd won and he thought those were votes that were legally cast for him that had not been counted. It was unfair. But now he's going to have the problem of, there's of all these other people, and someone's going to say, whoever it was, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, I don't know exactly who, tried to obtain the information from the forging and the impersonating official and all that stuff, which is more obviously that underlying criminal conduct, and they're going to make a deal and then say Trump knew about it or even directed us to do it, and then he's screwed. So it doesn't look good.
It's tough. All right, we'll have more Rising for you after this.